Okay, hello everyone. So this little video is going to go over the questions that you guys answered yesterday in Google Classroom, those review questions. And then it's just going to go over some new topics that you guys looked at in your Google Slides and notes from yesterday or last class. Okay. Um, so one of the first questions I asked you guys to kind of review and go over was the fighting styles of the Viet Cong. Um, so we're going to start with that. As you guys know, the North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong were fighting for their homeland, right? To them, the United States was an aggressor who was coming, from thousands of miles away and was, trying to tell them what to do. So they were fighting for their homelands. They were fighting for their way of life. They were fighting for communism, right? Because they wanted to expand communism. So because of that, they had lots of passion and were willing to sacrifice pretty much anything in order to defeat the United States or, annoy the United States as much as possible. Okay. So because it is their homeland, they know the terrain extremely well. They know how to use it to their advantage. Okay. So, as you guys hopefully know, they decided to build underground tunnels all throughout North and South Vietnam. These tunnels allowed them the ability to sneak up on American soldiers really quickly, um, attack in the middle of the night. And as American soldiers started to figure out where they were coming from, they would go back down on the ground and disappear. This allowed them to cause lots of havoc. Um, they also, as you guys understand, hopefully, is they would use the jungle as camouflage. So they would put different leaves, um, plants onto their uniforms, would just give them an extra disguise so they could sneak up on American soldiers quickly and without detection. They used ambush techniques, so they would attack very, very, very quickly when American soldiers were not expecting it, cause as much damage as they could, and then quickly get out of the way. Um, they also used lots of traps, the booby traps. I think you guys remember from class, the one American soldiers are walking, fall down into a pit that has the bamboo sticks. So it caused lots of deaths um, and pain for us. They also use mines, which they would obviously blow up when an American soldier touched something or stepped on a part of the ground. This would lead to the missing limbs, people bleeding to death. So they were very, very brutal. And lastly, what they did here was they also pretended that they were civilians. So they would dress like civilians. That way, American soldiers never knew who their enemy was, who their friend was. And all this was meant not so much to beat us um, militarily. They knew that they did not have the ability to kind of meet us heads up or one on one. So this was their war of attrition. The war of attrition was to make this war last as long as possible, to try to kill as many of us as possible, but really to get American citizens back home sick of the war. Okay, so that was the North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong's fighting styles and their goal. Okay, the United States strategy. That once we started to realize that they were using camouflage, using the environment to their advantage, we said let's burn down the jungle. So we used something called Agent Orange, which killed all the vegetation, and something called napalm, bombs that pretty much start fires all over the place. So we're thinking that if we get rid of this cover, we can see the soldiers of the Viet Cong better, and we can kill them, right? We also used search and destroy tactics when platoons would be given the order to go into certain parts of Vietnam, certain villages, and you are finding any Viet Cong, any North Vietnamese soldier or supporter, and your job is to kill those people or destroy that village. Right. Our goal here was war of attrition as well. We believed that if we killed enough of them, we would be able to get them to give up. Right. So it was a body count. After every battle, we would count how many soldiers we killed of theirs, and we would publish it for the world to know. Hopefully, we're trying to discourage them, get them to realize that they have no chance of defeating us. Okay, the last question I had you guys answer was the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. This incident, if you guys remember from a couple weeks ago, really got the United States involved in the war in Vietnam. After this incident, we sent thousands and then about 500,000 American soldiers to Vietnam. This was the incident where supposedly we had North Vietnamese ships that were shooting at American ships. We kind of blew it out of proportion or exaggerated it a little bit. And the President of the United States used this as an excuse to send American soldiers. Okay. So some new topics now that we're going to go over is kind of the draft that happens in the Vietnam War. Okay. So the United States, because we were sending so many people over to fight, we needed obviously men to go over and to be the soldiers. Unfortunately, the Vietnam War was not very popular among American citizens for numerous reasons. Many people didn't really understand why we were getting involved in Vietnam. We didn't see these people as, a threat to us. They were just kind of communist. So there wasn't a lot of backing. We also started to hear that American soldiers were, killing some civilians, were kind of committing some massacres. So a lot of people didn't want to get involved. Therefore, we needed the draft, and the government kind of selected men based on different requirements and pretty much forced them to fight for the United States. Okay. Because the war was so unpopular, many men did everything in their power to get out of fighting in Vietnam. So some people were conscientious objectors, which means that they used their religious beliefs to say that they were against violence, that they could not kill because it was against their religion. This was what Muhammad Ali argued, that his religion of Islam is a religion of peace, and he would not fight in the war. So he refused, right? You also had people would get medical excuses. Something was wrong with them. They had asthma or their eyes weren't good, so they would be withheld from joining the military. People would join the National Guard. The National Guard is a type of military service, but it's pretty much you're protecting the home country, the United States. You had people would go to college, right? So education was important, and the government would allow you to get out of going to war if you were in college. This tended to be extremely unfair during this time period because pretty much the only people that could afford to go to college were wealthy white individuals. So a majority of the people fighting this war were poor whites and minorities. So it became a real working class war, and this led to issues as well. Right? People were upset that rich people got out of it, while poor people had to go and fight and possibly give up their lives. Right? All right, guys. So that is the end of the video. Hopefully that helps, and we'll talk soon.